Thanks for tuning in to Andrea in the Morning. This is Andrea Raquel, the social entrepreneur and sugar-free coach. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in and following. I hope you've liked our page on Facebook. That's facebook.com/sugar-free coach, as well as on Twitter. You can catch me on Twitter at sugar-free coach. I will follow back and reciprocate. I always do. Look at there. Mic was off on TikTok. Hey, TikTok. Sorry, my mic was off, but I did get my microphone problems fixed from yesterday. And I'm not even going to go into that because I just explained it to the wisdom community, and I want to let you all know, if you would like to engage in the conversation, all you have to do is click the link. And I do believe there's a clickable link in my little window here that you can click on. If it doesn't work, I don't know. That's what I thought it was for. So if it doesn't work, but otherwise you can go to my browser link that's right there in my profile. My website is there. And also too, right at the top of my website is how to get to wisdom. So if you get to wisdom other than today's show link, which I also shared on social media, then you're going to want to scroll and find the talk so that you can talk. Okay, so after I finish reading the articles, then we'll open it up for discussion. Okay, that's why I started early, so we can have time and give everybody time to get here and all that good stuff. And some of the information might be a little redundant, so I'm probably going to do a little bit of sifting. Because there's a lot. There's like 5 articles. I'm not going to read all 5 of them. I'm going to summarize because that's what I do. Okay, that's my skill set. I can sift through information. There is a hilarious video that I shared the other day of a news anchor who was reading the teleprompter and said, what did he say? I think he meant to say pantries. But he said panties instead. And I think it was on the teleprompter that way. Yeah, it definitely was on the teleprompter that way. Because the lady said, oh, I couldn't warn you. That's what she said. So in order for her to think that, you know, there was something for her to warn him from, she had to see it ahead of time. But there's a technique to reading ahead. And so that's what you're supposed to do when you're on TV and you have somebody else wrote some script for you. You're supposed to read ahead. But I guess he wasn't reading ahead, so that junk was hilarious. Okay, so TikTok. I am in this article, so I cannot see your comments.
To be representing our country.
Okay, and I don't know why Donald Trump is talking. They got pop-ups. Okay, so this article is entitled Vietnam War Veterans, Kids Say Agent Orange Impact a Nightmare. Now, for those of you who are just joining us, if you're just brand new, I'm the Andrea Raquel Young, the social entrepreneur and sugar-free coach. My brand is Living Sugar-Free. It's not a diet. It's a lifestyle. It is about living well and finding balance in every area of your life. I am Candida-free. I try to minimize my sugar intake and certainly try to avoid refined sugars, but I am not fanatical about anything. So if you ever see me eating some birthday cake, don't trip. Just know I'm not going to eat the whole cake. I'm going to give it away. If it's somebody else's cake, I'm going to eat a small part. I probably didn't eat the icing. And I'm not going to have no sugar tomorrow to make up for it. And I don't endorse any type of diets or anything like that. I use a line of products, been using them for 20 years. If you want to know why my skin looks the way it looks, because I don't put chemicals on my body. I had a episode a few months back. I went on vacation, and I highly believe that it had to do with and I'm not throwing them under the bus because there's some good products. Like, I want to tell y'all about these products that me and my husband found. I want to tell y'all about them so bad, but I can't because I believe they have like gluten or whatever stuff in them. And most over-the-counter products do. So for that reason, I can't really tell y'all about what I use, but if you want to know, you can message me. It's legitimate, trusted, time-tested, and endorsed by like the Environmental Protection Agency, which is ironic that most people don't know about it. And the people that you tell about it act all funny about it. But the Environmental Protection Agency is like, yeah, good job. So anyway, that's who I am. If you want to know more about my story and my journey, you can check out the website. Wherever you're listening to me from, the link is in the bio, sugarfreecoaching.com. I'm at sugarfreecoach everywhere. Please do not follow any copycats with underscores or extra stuff. I own at sugarfreecoach, and I have for like 10, 12 years now. Hashtag living sugar free. Sometimes at living sugar free spelled all the way out, but you know, this is what I do. Because Living Sugar Free is the brand, and I know people don't like being spammed. People do not like making friends with people on social media and then getting spammed by them. I hear y'all. I get it. I am a marketing degree person, but I don't do the marketing thing. That's why y'all don't hear me really talking about marketing or selling marketing, because I don't like it. I prefer organic relationship building, but I do know some things. And so when I do that for my brand or for other people, I will do it underneath my brand, which is Living Sugar Free. That's how you can distinguish. You know, I've had people over the years, oh, how many accounts do you have? Well, I have 4 because I have 3 brands besides myself. And, you know, people will try to ostracize you and talk down, but I'm the one with the degrees in this stuff. So I know what I'm doing. Just because you don't get it doesn't mean that what I'm doing isn't the smart way to do it. And I'm not saying everybody should do it this way, but for me, this is the smart way to do it because I'm a brand. I'm a speaker and an author. I have my brand, which is merch and affiliate stuff. If you see promotions and selling stuff, even my merch, I have all that kind of stuff. And to be honest with you, it's a relationship gauge. Yeah, because a lot of people are supporting, following, quote unquote, Sugar Free Coach, but they act like they don't see Living Sugar Free. How can we help? How can we help? I don't need your help. I have a whole brand. Go over there and patronize it. Yeah. Now, if you want to just help and just throw money at something, I have a whole not-for-profit organization that benefits like orphans and children and veterans and social entrepreneurs. And that's over there. And you can go get involved. And yeah, so done and done. And I do realize that some people don't really want to deal with you unless you're in a position of needing their help. That's just how it is sometimes. But that's what's available, y'all. And so I like to say that because in my feed and in my network, oftentimes I hear people crying and talking about nobody being available and people not helping and them not being able to find honest people and genuine stuff. And I'm at a point in my life where when I hear people saying that, it makes me look at them side-eye. That's where I'm at now. Because we've been out here for almost 20 years now. 17 to be exact. Our reputation speaks for itself. We have the receipts. You can look us up. You can find us. And so all of that, there is nobody doing it. That's not true. And we're not the only ones. I'm just saying that people who tend to think that way, you got to be careful of bleeding heart people who act like they're gonna sing you like the biggest song, like you're the greatest person on the planet and you're so different than everybody else and nobody else has ever treated them that way. But in reality, they're complainers and they're crybabies and they don't have gratitude for the people that have helped them. Okay, period. I done been through some stuff and I'm about to read some articles and the reason I'm reading articles is because it's easier to explain something through the statistics that the corporations and the doctors and the government are saying than it is to just for people to tell their own experience and people believe it, sadly. But it's also interesting that we have all of these statistics and all these documentation, but nobody's still not doing anything about it. So this one is by ABC News. Vietnam War veterans' kids say Agent Orange impact a nightmare. I am a hostage and a prisoner, imprisoned by my handicap, one survivor said. Angelica K. Kuhn, I'm not sure, was on the road to becoming a nurse. The mother of 2 was working as a patient care technician nearly 2 decades ago. And the article, by the way, I want to give y'all the date. I kind of hate internet articles the way they do this sometimes. They don't give you the date of publishing. I could go back and see. But we know that it's in, okay, I can tell you the person is a millennial or a Gen Zer, I think. She don't really look like a Gen Xer. But we know because of this, because of what we're talking about, kind of like what the time period is, okay? And because of the wars that we're talking about, okay? So we know that the boomer parent and the Gen X may be millennial kids, okay? And their grandkids, okay? The mother of two was working as a patient care technician nearly 2 decades ago when one day she heard a pop in her back. Yeah, that's not what you want to have happen. You don't want to just be hearing random noises. She was in pain for days, and after several tests, she was diagnosed with spina bifida, a spinal cord defect common in children of male Vietnam veterans who were exposed to Agent Orange. The daughter of a combat Vietnam veteran who served in 1969 until 1970 in areas that were the most heavily sprayed with Agent Orange, Kuhn said most of her life she struggled with neurogenic stomach and bowel issues that were often misdiagnosed. Now, y'all know, as the sugar-free coach, I have to interject right there that you can be poisoned by something, but don't get it twisted. It's going to impact some people more than others based on the level of toxins they already have and how much continued poisoning, okay? Because when we say, oh, it's because of gluten, oh, it's because of this or because of that, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden when the doctors say, oh, you got this disease as a result of this, that all that other stuff isn't true too. And that's what I find. I find people have a hard time wrapping their mind around, okay, well, if you go research gluten and the impact that it has on people, especially vegetarians, you will advance like 80% in your autoimmune disease. Because the people who have autoimmune diseases that seem like they just can't do nothing about them, it's mind-blowing to me. Because if you try to talk to them about the candida and the gluten, they will say, oh, no, it's because of this. Well, yes, that might be true, but it is compounded by what I'm saying. And if you consider what I'm saying, you'll be able to manage it better. That's all. And that's medicine. And that's science. I mean, if you just go, take some anatomy and physiology, you can, audit, like a medical class. You can take a medical class online. I'm not saying you should go become a medical doctor or be given advice or self-diagnosing, but some of this stuff is basic science. So by learning about science, you can understand the same stuff the doctors are saying, and you can eliminate the possibility that they might just be telling you what the latest drug company is telling them to say so that they can promote the next drug, because we know for a fact that that's an element to the medical industry. That's all I'm suggesting. Okay, so her father, years later, would later be diagnosed with several heart conditions and diabetes, all related to Agent Orange exposure. Now, my dad had a triple bypass surgery a few years ago, and the doctors outside of the VA who operated on him directly related it to Agent Orange. He still had to fight a long time ago to get his full benefits. But again, that doesn't mean that he, from then to now, if you look at him, you'll never even know that happened to him. Why? A triple bypass surgery, y'all, that's kind of a big deal. First of all, if you don't self-manage right after the surgery, you're going to be jacked up. Like, he had to carry a pillow around with him, so that when he sat down, he wouldn't accidentally put his hands down. Y'all, listen, this is science. You can say all day long, I won't, or I know, but natural human inclination and the way that we develop certain habits, the doctors knew that if they didn't give him a pillow, then he was going to accidentally put his hand down and bust his stitches in his heart. What? That's kind of a big deal, I think. Yeah. So, they related that directly to his Agent Orange exposure, because my dad served in Vietnam and Korea, both twice. Not to mention the other wars, because he was a 30 plus year retiree. He retired. So yeah, it's very real. But like I said, from then to now, if you look at him, you'll never even know that he went through that. And he'll tell you in a minute, I only have it's like 25% use of his heart that they say. But he still knows that he has to eat right. He has to avoid sugar. And my dad has always been a healthy eater anyway. I get it honestly, the way that I am, you know. My parents don't, neither one of my parents are like junk food crazy. You know, they raised us up eating quote unquote right, which is like what some people didn't realize was eating right, but we're now finding all the stuff we ate were superfoods, beets and greens and kale and spinach and, you know, sweet potatoes and using oregano and rosemary and turmeric in our food. Okay. You know, I had to get some oregano the other day. I was making this soup. I was doing my little wintertime soup and cleanse and all of that kind of stuff. And I was looking at my list of herbs that I know are good, healing herbs that they never told us about, cancer fighting herbs and stuff like that. And oils, right? Like coconut oil and vegetables and stuff. And so I asked my husband to get me some oregano. And I didn't even realize that oregano was what I had been missing in my food, why my food don't taste like my mama's. Because my mama is heavy on the oregano. So my mom being heavy on the oregano, she got that from her mama, right? So this is generations of women just seasoning foods for a whole community of people, and probably somebody way back before my grandma, even probably to her mama, my great grandma Nola probably knew that oregano was healing, curing herbal. Just like they knew to give us castor oil, they knew to grease us up with coconut oil, they knew to dose us with oregano. And I've been getting dosed with oregano and rosemary my whole life and didn't even realize that's why I'm so healthy, in spite of, you know, the candida battle that I had. I probably would have been way worse off with my illnesses, my upper respiratory, my bronchitis and all that stuff, right? And I would have never been able to get it up off me quickly. I would have never recovered from all of the antibiotics that they dosed me with so much. And as a veteran and a child that was born abroad, let's not even talk about the vaccinations, okay? I would have never recovered from all of that, probably, if I didn't have all of these counteracting healing herbal remedies that I've been getting dosed with my whole life without even knowing it. And then I move away and I don't know what the ingredients are. I don't know the magic. And all of a sudden I start getting off. I start feeling off. I start having issues. You can't tell me there's not something to this. I'm just a walking product. So you don't have to take my advice and you don't have to do what I say. But just know, I can't read all of this and just do it from the victim standpoint. I have to also, because I know my audience, I have to also talk about, you know, how we pick it up and keep it moving. That's why it's about hidden heroes. That's why it's about voices of resilience, you know, because we do the best we can and we make do because we're soldiers. And that's not the veterans. I'm talking about the children of the veterans. We're soldiers, period. It's what we do. If nothing, our parents passed down that hua, drive on, suck it up, adapt and overcome mindset. Kuhn eventually received her nursing license and went back to work, but her career was short-lived since then. She has had 28 different surgeries and is now legally disabled. I am a hostage and a prisoner, she wrote in an email to ABC News. Imprisoned by my handicap, all because of known, in all caps letters, toxic chemical that was dumped on my unsuspecting father and millions of other unsuspecting members of our military who have/are paying with their lives and the lives of their children. Whew, that's a heavy statement. There's a little article in here, side note, that says, and I have these articles, y'all, that are linked to the blog. If you're on TikTok, you can see the links. If you're on Wisdom, you can just click the link in my bio. But, you know, we always have a blog to go along with the series, okay? And so you can get the reference to these articles I'm talking about, and you can dig deeper if you want to. I don't know how much more deep you need to go on the facts. You can probably ask your next door neighbor or somebody in your community. They probably live in this story that I'm talking about. But it says more. Vietnam, U.S. complete cleanup of toxic chemical from airport. I mean, use your imagination. It's probably worse. More than 40 years after the end of the Vietnam War, children of the men and women who served say they are battling a new war for benefits as they grapple with the impact of toxic exposure, which has wreaked havoc on their lives. Agent Orange is a term that is used to describe a series of odorless herbicides that were used by the military to defoliate hiding places, fields, and rice paddies that were used by the Viet Cong for survival. Okay, that's war crimes, y'all. And never mind the crimes against these children and soldiers, but we're not talking about that. But anyway, the chemical was also used at several U.S. military posts in America, Southeast Asia, and Canada, according to the agency. When I say everybody, y'all, I mean everybody. Okay. Earlier this year, the agency recognized publicly for the first time that some service members were exposed to dioxin because C-123s that were used, C-123s, that were used to spray the Agent Orange was still being used by the Air Force and Air Force reserves in the U.S. until 1986. 1986. Did you hear what I said? 1986. Now, I enlisted in 94, 95, something like that. I don't know. But I just want to give y'all a feel of this time period that we're talking about. So 86, that would be the year that my older Gen X cousins graduated from high school in 1987. I remember this so clearly, even though y'all know I'm bad with dates. The reason I remember it so clearly is because their little class slogan, little party line tag thing that they used to say was all the way to heaven, class of 87. And Dougie Fresh was out back then, and they would be like, all the way to heaven, 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 class of 87, 7. I remember that. So I know that my older Gen X cousins graduated from high school in 1987. So that means that there were people in their age group who enlisted in the Air Force. Okay? That's what I just read. Where is it at? Air Force and Air Force Reserves. Okay. Matter of fact, I know I got one cousin who I don't even know if he would be considered a boomer or a Gen Xer. I would say he's a Gen Xer. But when I start really counting the ages of that really, really upper echelon of people that I'm thinking about, I really don't even realize they're not even in the Gen X. But that's how this whole generational thing can be great. Because if you're in the middle, it's hard to say which of the two generations you're going to be more like based on who you associated with and who your network of people were or whatever. But I know for a fact that he would have been one of these people. And then I'm also thinking about the kind of people who maybe for whatever reason didn't finish high school or something happened and then they end up joining the military. Okay. 1986. This is our generation of people who, even if you weren't the child of somebody who served in Vietnam, you yourself could have been directly exposed just by either working on one of these planes, being in the hangars in the area, having to stock the planes, logistics, and all of that. Because the whole point of a toxic chemical, especially in a powder, right? If it's on somebody's backpack, if it's in the carpets of the plane, if it's whatever, and that's where you are, I don't care how many years later, you're going to be exposed to that. Okay, so now we have Gen Xers who could have joined in 86. Now we're talking about the children of those people, and we're talking about millennials and Gen Z. See, it didn't make sense at first when I said this, y'all. When I said everybody, when I said millennials and Gen Z, and I'm going, this is just one example of how it's so many more people than how they kind of gloss over it and make it sound. Okay. 5 years after the C-123s were taken out of service, the Agent Orange Act passed in Congress, allowing returning men and women to receive medical compensation for this illness. Right. But unless you're showing signs of an illness in order to get diagnosed with an illness right now, then you're not going to get compensated for the illness. And so then years later, when they try to cover it up and act like, oh no, that's pre-existing or it's related to something else or whatever, then good luck with that. That's the reality of what really happened. Okay. The VA declared specific conditions ranging from diabetes to cancer directly tied to presumptive exposure to Agent Orange and dioxin. That makes it really sound like people have really been getting taken care of, but I don't know a better example than my dad of somebody who didn't. For him to go all of these years and retire from the military and be service-connected disabled because he had a grenade blow up in his face. I'm not making that up or sensationalizing. That's a true story. The reason my father is partially blind in one eye is because he had a grenade blow up in his face. It's a wonder that he still got his face, but he got shrapnel in his eye. And that was one of those in garrison accidents. If you don't know anything about military life, if you ever drive past military installation, they have a little sign up to tell you how many people have died since the last time training incidents in the last 30 days or whatever. So somebody threw a grenade in the wrong direction and it blew up and the shrapnel got in his eye, and he's partially blind in one eye now. So that happened. I'm not going to say it wasn't before 1986. It might have been just a little bit after that. Maybe 90s, somewhere around there, 89, 88, 87, I don't know, somewhere around there. Late 80s, early 90s is when it happened to him. Okay, so that disability has been in existence. He stayed in the military after that. When he got out, he retired, and my dad worked for Homeland Security. So being in the system and being in the records and seeing the military and the VA and all of that, he'd been doing that. He helps people do their claims. So understanding and navigating the system, all of that too, right? But it took all these years later for him, and thank goodness that he was married to somebody and then they had some additional benefits and also too because of his job probably. Because he ended up having to go to a regular civilian doctor because the VA couldn't see him. And it was like one of them, if you don't have the surgery, you're going to die type situations. And only after that did he have the radar on him to, oh, you have a disability connection to this Agent Orange. And so if that only just happened in recent years, well, ain't no way in the world then his children would have any type of acknowledgement from it, you see. But just by the very nature of what he did and how many times he did it, what he did for a living, you could just follow the paper trail and see that if you're saying this is how people were exposed, you could have literally pulled the records. Hey, you could have pulled the HR records and look at all the people who were assigned. This is what they do. When they do a class action lawsuit, I know because I've been part of several of them. Right? I will open my mail and get a letter in the mail. This has happened to me so many times where I will open my mailbox and there will be a check in it because of some class action lawsuit from something that I was a part of, or some place I worked, or some company that was doing something janky that I patronized or whatever. Right? And the reason that even though I didn't know about it, I didn't help, I didn't have nothing to do with it, I didn't testify, I didn't fill out no papers or nothing, that they can include me is because why? You know who your customers were from 1986 to 1990. You got records. So you owe all them people a check, period. Or at least you owe them to notify them and let them know they can come over here and get their check. But making people jump through hoops to go apply for a check and making them prove that they had damages from something that you lost a class action lawsuit for, that's a no-go. That's not how it works, period. Once they lose the class action lawsuit, the money is yours. Even if they don't cut you a check, all you got to do is go get it. You don't have to prove that you have damages because the whole point of their lawsuit is that you're going to have damages. Or you might already have damages, but you're just managing them well. And so you're not, quote unquote, calling yourself handicapped, but it doesn't mean that they didn't do something to you. It don't work like that, except for with the military and the government. It works like that with the military and the government because there's a lawsuit that should be able to be had from all the people who have been wrongfully incarcerated. But they done passed some type of law in Virginia, for example, where the first couple of people they got paid, they changed the laws where you can't get paid like that no more. Because they know they got a lot of people in jail that ain't supposed to be there. I gotta laugh. And I'm not laughing at nobody. This is my situation, so I can laugh. Whew. Okay. The VA recognized over a dozen medical conditions for children of women who served in Vietnam. However, for the children of the men who served in Vietnam, only spina bifida is recognized as being directly connected to Agent Orange exposure. And you see how they put that in 2 different paragraphs? This is a press release. Y'all do understand ABC News didn't write this. This is a press release written by the people we're talking about. Okay, so they made sure it's worded the way they needed it to be worded. How do I know? Because that's what I did for a living when I was in the military. Okay, and so I can draw your attention to the fact that this is 2 separate paragraphs. First of all, they said, the VA declared specific conditions ranging from diabetes to cancer directly tied to presumptive exposure to Agent Orange and dioxin. And then in a whole separate paragraph, they said the VA recognized over a dozen medical conditions, but you only named 3. First of all, what are the rest of them, and where do I find them, and how do I supposed to know this information? A dozen medical conditions for children of women who served in Vietnam. Now, mind you, I realize that's a very small number of people. Why? Because this was still during the time when they were not acknowledging women service members or allowing them to do stuff. Okay, but there were enough of them. Okay, so they recognized 12 over 12, right? Over 12. Is that 20? Is that 100? We don't know. Okay, this is how you write propaganda. Omission, right? Over a dozen medical conditions for children of women. Now, I wouldn't even say that because in proper English and context and writing and whatever the rules, you wouldn't say over a dozen if it was closer to 20 or whatever, right? If it was more than 2 dozen, you would say over 2 dozen, right? But when you first do something like what I first said, like splitting these 2 paragraphs that really should have been 1, it causes me to look for more stuff that you did, okay? So now I'm also looking at the fact that they said over a dozen, and it ain't no telling what that number is, because they can do that. They didn't lie, right? And even if they do lie, they just come back later and do a reprint and say, oh, my bad, we got it wrong, and nobody cares. Nobody thinks it was intentional. So again, over a dozen medical conditions for children of women who served in Vietnam. However, for the children of the men who served in Vietnam, only spina bifida is recognized as being directly connected to Agent Orange exposure. Now, the reason those 2 paragraphs should have been mashed together is because the first one made it seem like it was anybody and everybody, and if somebody didn't continue to read, they wouldn't know the rest. And you could say shame on the person, but we're talking about disabled people. You don't know what might happen, okay? You don't write like that. You don't write paragraphs and leave out huge amounts of information and let that be the paragraph just to string people along and keep reading when it's this type of article. That's one thing in a sales copy or in a landing page where you're trying to sell something, and even that is a marketing grift or whatever, okay? But this is something supposed to be like a, informational. So why does this paragraph, first of all, when do you write paragraphs with only 1 sentence in them? That's how you can tell it ain't right. Something's not right here, okay? And and only because I know about all of the people who are these children that I'm reading about right now who have tried to go and get some type of care or aid, and they get blank face, ghost face. I don't know what you want me to do with this. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know. You're not a veteran. We don't have you in our system. You see, the gatekeepers, the people who sit behind the desk, and if you're one of these people, please don't treat your customers like this. But the gatekeepers who sit behind the desk, they got enough energy. Most of them have enough energy to be halfway decent to veterans. They do. They're trained on it, and when they don't act like that, they get in trouble, and it makes the VA look bad, blah, blah, blah. So it's a thing. But if you're not just a decent human being, then when somebody asks you something that goes outside of how they trained you to be nice, now all of a sudden you don't have no more niceness left in you. And so you talking crazy to this orphan or this disabled child of a veteran. The veterans you're supposed to be serving. If you get paid to serve veterans, then that means when they children come to your desk and ask you questions, you're supposed to answer them. okay? And be nice about it, period. You see, when veterans commit suicide on the steps of the VA and the Capitol and stuff, they're trying to send a message because they weren't being taken care of. So you can imagine how they treat people that they think it's not their job to deal with them. And so I'm telling y'all, I know a lot of people, and there's not a clear-cut process. Even as a solopreneur, somebody who manages my own brand and I don't have to answer to nobody, I work on having clear-cut workflows, processes, systems in place. Six Sigma, all that. And it's just me. I mean, I can just write it in a notebook, but that's not good enough. So for a whole corporation or organization where you got people, least of all, where you're doing nonprofit work or you're doing medical care or anything like that, how are you not putting clear-cut workflows in place? I mean, if it made it to the news, clearly you know about it. You know it's a thing. So well, how come nobody ever thought to have an office just for these kids or a process, a workflow? I'm telling y'all it doesn't exist. And I know it doesn't exist because before I decided to do this series, I made sure that I asked the questions I needed to ask to certain key people to find out if maybe something has changed, and it hasn't. So with what I just read, y'all, even if we're talking about these children of these women who have these over a dozen medical conditions, what exactly are they supposed to do about it? If you know, send me a message. Because I'm telling y'all, people don't know. If there's some loophole, if there's some privilege workaround, let me find out that a group of privileged people been navigating these waters just fine, because then we really gonna have a problem. Please tell me if that's the case. If your children and your spouses don't have none of these problems that I'm talking about, please send me a message. That's using your privilege for good. If you have a clear-cut way to navigate this system, other than going and hiring an attorney, please. Because that's more gatekeeping, y'all. Every time we pay the attorneys to fix something that we really shouldn't even have to deal with in the first place, we didn't fix it. You just paid the good old boys to go over there and make a backroom deal so that they could sign off on your stuff so you would shut up about it, okay? So anyway, them two janky paragraphs. And now we get to another one-sentence paragraph. The VA did not respond to ABC News's multiple requests for comment. I wonder why, because they was going to ask them all the questions that I'm asking right now, probably. In 2017, Representative Barbara Lee, Democrat of California, introduced legislation in Congress to allow the VA to recognize more medical conditions from children and grandchildren of male veterans. The bill is still being considered, but hasn't gone to a vote. Then the more section says, 50 years later, Marine Award Medal of Honor for Vietnam War Battle. Okay, we're not going to read that. The Vietnam Veterans of America, a nonprofit, has been advocating for decades for the government to assist veterans with issues as it relates to Agent Orange, and has held over 300 town halls on this issue. Again, if you think that a whole organization had to be founded so that they could advocate and fight the government for 300 town hall issues, what do you think is happening to the children and the spouses? Their project, Faces of Agent Orange, focuses on children and grandchildren of both male and female veterans with filing claims with the VA. Okay, so this is a resource, you guys. It's called Vietnam Veterans of America. And their program is called Faces of Agent Orange. So I got to highlight this, okay, because we just found a resource. That's why I wanted to read these articles precisely right there. I'm copying and I'm pasting it. And again, y'all can go yourself on the blog, on my website, and get these links to these articles, okay, because I did share them over there. I'm just trying to decide which notebook I'm going to paste these in. Okay, putting brats and spouses resource. Because guess what? What that tells me is that even though when the people that I know have gone over there, they have gotten looked at like they were crazy and acted like, what you want us to do about it? This tells me that it is their responsibility to do something. This tells me that is the correct place to submit the form to. So if you're dealing with this If you've been invited to this talk because somebody told you that this is what we're doing, y'all, this is why I said, invite people. Anybody who needs this information, please invite them, because that's why I'm doing this. That's the whole point of why I'm doing this. It's ridiculous. Like, I don't do name dropping for good, like for my benefit. I don't do name dropping. If I'm name dropping, it's because I'm trying to promote somebody, right? And that's what they want me to do. I don't do name dropping just for my own. Ooh, look at me. Look who I know, or look where I've been or what I've done. And I certainly don't do telling people's business. So even though I got plenty of receipts and stories to back up what I'm talking about, I only really do that either if somebody is coming on here and we're interviewing them. I'm going to take a little break because I feel like we've been at this for a minute. I'm going to finish up this article and we're going to take a break before the next one. And then I guess, I don't know. You know what I think I'm going to do? How long we've been at this? I'm going to take a break. I'm going to take breaks in between because if I break, then I will have my entire recording and I'll have plenty of time for people to come up. Oh, look, all I gotta do is close the camera now. For people to come up and share. So I think I'm gonna break and come back to do the next one. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish up this article and then we'll break before the next one, okay? Because I need to get off. As a matter of fact, it'll be even better for me to have them in separate segments for my editing purposes. Okay, so yay, we found a resource. Okay, so their project, Faces of Agent Orange, focuses on children and grandchildren of both male and female veterans with filing claims with the VA. The group says they are attempting to help the government have an accurate database on the long-term effects of the chemical exposure. You can't review science that doesn't exist, and nobody was funding the science on the children or the grandchildren, said Moki Porter, the communications director for the Vietnam Veterans of America. On Wednesday, the U.S. announced that it had completed a cleanup the dioxin-saturated soil, the area surrounding Da Nang Airport, an area heavily sprayed with Agent Orange, according to Vietnamese American officials. They just now cleaning it up, y'all. And this article may have been published in the past few years. We don't know. But it ain't that old. I can tell you that much. Okay? All of this is new. And in October, Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis traveled to Vietnam to visit Bien Ho Air Base, a spot that is undergoing a $390 million soil restoration project headed by U.S. Agency for International Development. Did y'all know we had a U.S. Agency for International Development? When we say that we don't care nothing about peace in the Middle East or nowhere else, we just gonna let it happen because then we get to come in and be the great white hopes with our U.S. Agency for International Development. That's colonization at its finest. Okay, you instigate a fight between two other people and give them both weapons and let them battle it out, and then you come in with your U.S. Agency for International Development. The Vietnamese, and you let the missionaries go first, because then they can get their pickings of conversions and building a missionaries and soften the blow for your capitalism to come in. The Vietnamese claim that 4 million people were exposed to Agent Orange and 3 million of its people suffer from medical conditions that were caused by the exposure from the Vietnam War. Despite the efforts to decontaminate the soil, the U.S. vehemently denies that the number of Agent Orange illnesses are that high. What? Which, according to the Vietnamese, includes children of men and women who were exposed to the dioxin following the war. Betty McTechie, the executive director of Birth Defect Research for Children and Florida-based nonprofit, says she's collected data since 1986 on birth defects from toxic exposure. Because more men served in Vietnam, McTechie says she has received more data specifically showing birth defects in the descendants of male veterans, like I said before. Her organization has collected data from nearly 10,000 veterans, 2,000 children of Vietnam veterans, and 300 grandchildren of veterans. Many of the medical conditions she's seen in grandchildren of veterans aren't physical. McTechie says she's seen issues with ovaries, endocrine, learning, and attention deficit disorders, and cancer. We don't have 10 years to look at these things. These kids are having problems right now, and we need to get on it right now, not 10 years from now. She says that the scientific community should focus on assisting children of veterans instead of studying them. Who do y'all think all them MK Ultra and all them kind of experiments were on? When you see like Lost is the main movie I could think of. But these movies, they go show like black and white videos of all these little kids in laboratories. Who do y'all think them children were? The people that they had as a captive audience whose parents weren't going to say no. If they knew what was going on. A lot of them didn't know what was going on. And if your dad was like mine or your mom was like mine and they was off over in Vietnam, they didn't know what was going on in the schoolhouse where you were at. What y'all think? Who y'all think they did all of this research and all of this testing on all these years? I'm just saying. Kuhn, who is an administrator of a Facebook group for second and third generation children with Agent Orange exposure, says many of her fellow members are suffering from rare medical conditions. It's happening to us in droves. That's another resource. Okay. So this lady, her name again is it the Mekdachi? Whose name was Kuhn? I don't remember. This is why I don't like when they do this, y'all. Get the whole name, because you're way too far down in the article for us to even remember who you're talking about. Whoever the Kuhn person was. But like I said, you can go get this article yourself, okay? You can get these resources. You can do like I'm doing right now to scroll back up and see. The lady who had to fight. She started her Facebook group, okay? So she has a support group, and that's who Kuhn is. If you want support. But y'all also, too, be mindful of support groups run by victims. Okay? Not saying that victims can't start stuff. Oftentimes, what you see in the nonprofit sector is people who survive what they went through, then they start a nonprofit. But be careful, because if there's no professionals and people, if nobody's getting any kind of training, groups like that are targets. Okay? For scams and all kind of stuff. Just be careful. And a support group is to commiserate. A support group is not necessarily for resources. If we're in a group and we're all still complaining, clearly ain't nobody got no solutions. Okay? So just be careful about that. Seek solutions and not necessarily, somebody who can identify, somebody who can relate, somebody who I can talk to. Well, if they ain't talking about no solutions, you might want to keep searching. Okay? But as I said when I first started off this talk, if you crying about how there's no support and no solutions available, I'm side-eyeing you, because we right here. So even though we didn't have an answer to this question necessarily, what kind of solutions are you looking for is the question, right? Okay, so it's always things that aren't normal, she said. With my condition, the doctor will tell you that it's something so rare that you hardly see it. Kuhn said she applied for VA benefits in 2000 and was granted only partial benefits. She appealed the VA's decision, saying that she met the criteria and was legally disabled. Okay, so that's a great FYI too. Here's somebody who applied for these benefits at the VA and was granted at least partial. She didn't get the blank face. She actually got her paperwork processed. So I don't need nobody to come up here and tell me now. This is a story, an example of somebody who did get some type of resolve, and it wasn't full, because if you're totally disabled, you're supposed to get 100%, but they weren't ready to acknowledge it yet at that point. Kuhn says after a call to the Denver VA office of spina bifida, a VA employee asked if she was able to feed herself. Kuhn says after replied yes, she says the VA employee said since she could feed herself, she didn't need any additional help from them. Wow. Kuhn says she has appealed the VA's ruling and has successfully won twice, but has been denied 7 years of back pay. That's a whole nother thing, y'all. I'm owed so much back pay, I know I can hang it up, but I know that I'm going to get back pay to a certain point. But yeah, that's a thing too. And then also too, they have revamped the rules now to even change the back pay even more. So if you didn't make the effort and you have it documented, in the process, and you did the visit, you're not going to get the back pay. Okay. Kuhn said she often relies on wheelchairs and canes to move around, and because her husband works to support her family, she is often alone at home. She says the VA has denied her request to pay for a stair lift so she can be mobile in their 2-story home, and has denied her request for hand controls so she can drive her car. Kuhn says that although she is entitled to VA social worker due to her condition, she has yet to receive one and currently doesn't have a home health aide despite numerous requests. I'm entitled to a social worker too, and I was told I was going to get one, but they never called. So just, that's a thing. Not just for children and spouses, y'all. Good luck with that part. And maybe it's because they have a very limited amount of resources, which I submit that maybe the government should pay medical facility care, nursing, doctors, and all those people better at the VA so they can have a better pool of people to hire from. And not also, too, not have to settle for people who just can't get a job nowhere else. I'm not saying that's the case with the VA, but it is sometimes. Kuhn's family members say they have also suffered medical problems. Her mother developed a rare blood condition and was diagnosed with a toxic liver, and Kuhn's daughter suffers from a connective tissue disorder. Hey, y'all, this is not just autoimmune diseases like, like things that they diagnose us with, like with our stomach and, like rheumatoid arthritis. This is like birth defects, and they're still denying them. Okay. Under the VA guidelines, Kuhn's daughter would not be covered for VA benefits because her grandfather was a male veteran who served in Vietnam. It would have had to be, y'all, her mother or her grandmother. See, so they still haven't fixed that. See. And so that's the case also, too, with my family, right? My sister my dad is the veteran. My mom's not the veteran. So good luck with that. Dr. Kenneth Ramos, the chairman of 2014 congressionally mandated report by the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine on Veterans and Agent Orange, says that the majority of the generational studies done by the scientific community regarding Agent Orange has been focused on women and not men. Ramos says that changes in technology will help answer questions on transgenerational inheritance, but it won't answer all of the questions right away. The biggest challenge that you face with current generational inheritance is the length of time that it takes for you to see the facts. He says in order to fully study the impact on future generations, research would have to be started from scratch. Dr. Michael Skinner with Washington State University Center for Reproductive Biology has studied the transgenerational health effects of dioxin exposure using animals and says women who served in Vietnam and were, y'all, they grammar in this article is terrible, excuse me, and were exposed to Agent Orange could have passed the dioxin to children for at least 15 to 20 years after they returned home. The problem with dioxin or Agent Orange is that it stays in the system for a very long period of time. He also says through his research, he's seen dioxin pass through sperm to the offspring in animals. His concern is not with the veterans who returned home or their children, but with their grandchildren. We have examples where there is no disease in the first generation, but there's huge numbers of disease in the third generation, he said. On Thursday, the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine will release their report as part of the congressionally mandated biennial reviews of the evidence of health problems that may be linked to exposure to Agent Orange and other herbicides used during the Vietnam War. The report will address possible generational health effects that may be the result of herbicide exposure among male Vietnam veterans, according to the organization. The Vietnam Veterans of America, however, says regardless of the outcome of the report, they will continue to educate and advocate for its members and their descendants. In the meantime, Kuhn says she'll continue to push for awareness. It's been a nightmare, Kuhn said, and I vowed to continue fighting for awareness. You have to fight them because if you don't, they will run over you big time. And a lot of people, they just give up and walk away, and you can't do that. It's been my experience, y'all, that the people didn't give up and walk away. They died in the process. That's been my experience. And I know many stories of it. So, yeah, we're going to take a break. And I'm going to exit Wisdom, and I'm going to pause the live, because I can do that. And we'll be back in a second. Hold on, let me see how I do that. Yeah. So we'll be back in a second, folks. Not a second, but a few minutes. And because I want to get a clean recording,